all my colleagues. I hope that the audience, our friends in the room, can stay a little longer for the forthcoming discussion session. We will now have a brief session to take country perspectives. Very unfortunately, our friend Dr. Abdoulaye Diabate has not been able to join us. But we have with us Mamadou Coulibaliy. He's from Mali. And in Mali, it's one of the three African countries at the moment where our partners Target Malaria are already running a program that will eventually end in the release of gene-drive mosquitoes for malaria control. My name is Fredros. I work for Ifakara Health Institute in Tanzania. And I will also provide 2 minutes of what we could call country perspective. But I really just think something that we could say was the views from the continent. So, yeah, and again, Steve did clarify that they were his personal views. These too are my personal views. First, congratulations and thanks to Stephanie and the team from FNIH who helped us to organize this entire group and really make sure that we could bring together the different experts and look at this important subject in detail. The work that we do at Ifakara at the moment is not in any way related to the molecular aspects of gene drive, but it's really to provide support from an ecological perspective of what will happen in future. So if you think about it, in the end, assuming that the construct designs are successful and the regulatory approvals are there, we will need to make sure that the genetic constructs that we release can actually spread from one place to another. And we have to guarantee that, first of all, by really studying the gene flows in these mosquito populations and also being able to rear these mosquitoes in a colony. Because if you cannot create a colony of these species, you will not have anything to release. And some of of course, there's an assumption that you can rear all of them, but not all of them are that easy to rear. So we have projects, for example, that are looking at how can you establish colonies for Anopheles funestus, for example, which is a major vector in Africa already. When we started this work, there was something very interesting that was called Phase Zero. I don't know if you guys remember this. And at that time, Phase Zero was the idea that you would have a construct built in the US or UK or somewhere, and that would be the Phase Zero of it, and then it would be sent to Coulibaliy, to Mamadou, and then Phase One would begin from there. What happened very interestingly was that the group formulated this so-called co-development, which is an idea that came from Target Malaria, that actually recognized that you can build these gene drives from the very beginning, starting to work with the African partners at that time. So that was quite nice. Something that I would like to reiterate is the reason we are involved in this is so that we can understand it better, so we can inform our regulators better, because we also have a choice to say this technology sounds like it's so dangerous, we don't want to get involved. You know, if we do that, it means we will not have the information about how it works, what are the risks, what are the successes. So there's really an encouragement, and this has also been expressed in the Africa Union document that has been released this year, that African scientists need to really get involved in the science of gene drive. So that if we have questions, Claudia did mention we need FAQs. If we have questions, that we have people who can actually answer these questions. So these are a big reason here for our scientists to be involved and to stay involved in not just the discussion about it, but actually the science of it all. Other thing to reiterate is the multiplicity of species. I think Steve spoke about this in the beginning. There's always an assumption, and this is the most common question actually that people ask: what will happen when you eliminate mosquitoes? You know, you get asked all this all the time. As Steve was saying, we've been trying to eliminate them for ages, you know, spraying everywhere, killing billions of insects. But I just want to say that actually we have, 4,000, maybe 3,500 species of mosquitoes. 400 of them are anophelines. About 30, 40, up to 70 sometimes can transmit malaria. But in Africa, there's like 3 or 4 that are the major guys. So assuming that we have a gene drive construct, we will probably end up eliminating one or two if the elimination issue was the big deal. But if modification was the big deal, we would modify only one or two. So actually, in terms of biodiversity, there's still quite a big room. So if we work closely with our environmental guys, our regulators, there's still a lot of room here to do this safely without creating a diversity problem. Lastly, it's important for us to play on the due diligence side to make sure that we are as transparent as possible. So we must not create a narrative here that gene drive is entirely good. We also must not say that it's entirely bad. So if our scientists get involved, we will be able to say these are the advantages, these are the disadvantages. As someone who comes from Africa, I am also aware that we will be the biggest, we will accrue the biggest gains. In other words, if this was actually successful, you know, Africa Union says we want to eliminate malaria by 2030. I don't think we can do that with bed nets, with IRS, or with case management. I think those things will make a lot of gains, but there will still be quite a lot of gaps. So things such as gene drive give us the opportunity, in case they are successful, that we can actually accelerate this process and get to that goal of actual elimination. Recognizing that there are challenges associated with this, I think there is reason to be involved. And if we discover at some point that this is a dangerous path to go, our scientists will be able to tell us. But we've got to build that capacity for those scientists to be able to say that. And this is why people like the work that people like Mamadou Coulibaliy are already doing is incredibly important. And we need to support this one going forward. If we don't, we are stuck with this. So I'm going to invite my colleague Mamadou here to just give us a little bit of the description of the work they're doing in Mali, some perspectives from West Africa. And already I should say congratulations to him and his colleagues on the work they're doing. We thank you very, very much for taking the lead. We are right after you and we will support you. After that, we'll have a Q&A. Thank you very much, and let's welcome Mamadou.
Thank you, Fredros, for this brilliant introduction. My name is Mamadou Coulibaliy. I am a pharmacist to begin with, but I got bitten by an insect called entomology. And since 2006, I would like to call myself a vector biologist. And I'm also the coordinator for the country for Target Malaria, the project that Fredros mentioned to you. So this is a non-for-profit research alliance that works on genetically modified mosquitoes to fight against malaria mosquitoes. So I don't have slides for you today. Maybe it's because I grew jealousy to slides, just I want all attention for myself. Before I get to the perspectives for the country, I'd like to just do two reminders. One is about malaria burden. Steve mentioned some of it globally. So you got like more than 200 cases of malaria occurring every year with about 500,000 deaths. And the 80 to 90% of those cases and deaths occur in the sole sub-Saharan Africa. And for Mali, where I am from, there is more than 2 million cases every year, with about 2,000 deaths every year. So I don't think this is acceptable in the 21st century. And it's not because there is no tools. There are existing tools. We have bed nets, we have IRS, but I guess everybody will agree with me that those have been around for long. They are efficient, but maybe not enough to go to elimination or eradication. So definitely there is a need for additional tool for us to go to the elimination or to the eradication objectives. So for that, gene drive technology, GM mosquito technologies, I think should be considered and are being considered for additional tool to get to the objectives. The second reminder I want to bring up today is also why do we need additional tools? Sometimes we get this question, why? We have BEDNet, you have IRS. Why do you need additional tools? Well, one thing is, for now, BEDNets are efficient, but indoors. They are used indoors. IRS is very efficient, but again, it's indoor. And if you look at the data now, for entomological data now, you look at the biting place, it's almost split between indoors and outdoor, like almost 50%, 50%. If you collect 100 mosquitoes, indoor and outdoor, you find like, you may find like 50%, 50%. So you got the transmission also going outside. And where I'm from, Mali, people, it's a tropical area. It's very hot. So people, stay outside for a long time, up to midnight. And then you get like, chances to get your malaria dosage before you go under the bed. The second part is the insecticide resistance. Bed nets are using insecticides. For IRS, we are using insecticide. So there is a resistance developed in mosquitoes. So those two together, I think, trigger a thoughtful development for new tools that can be used to complement the existing tool. As Steve said, gene drive or GM are not going to be a magic bullet, but I think there could be a very good additional tool complementary to the existing tool. Now, what are the perspectives for Mali? What are we doing in Mali? In a nutshell, or just in a sentence, I would say maybe there's a need to adopt biotechnologies, including gene drive, to help save lives in Africa, not just in Mali, but in Africa, and that in a responsible way. Again, if you are to speak after many of those good speakers, you don't have much to say. They have said all. But again, I will probably come back to those ones. So what do I call a responsible adoption of those biotechnology? It's adopting gene drive or GM mosquitoes in a responsible way means to me, not saying that everything is good. The gene drive will just, on a click of the finger, make malaria go away, or it's really too bad. But that's not what I call a responsible way of adopting it. But we can accept it with all the precautions, the advantages, and acknowledging the risks, and also the benefits and the opportunities. The first thing that comes in my mind for the perspective is the regulatory part of the question. In Africa, in some of the countries like mine, we have already started building the regulatory bodies. The laws are ready, and you also have the organs to make the decisions. But everything is not perfect because there is need for training, training the regulators, to be able to make informed decisions. And so this has already started. NEPAD, I think Steve mentioned NEPAD, Danford Center. So and FNIH, I see Dave in the room. So these are bodies helping the national regulatory bodies to be effective in making informed decision. And there is another way. Mali and Burkina and Uganda, yes, we are probably starting the project, but we are not a silo. So there is also a regional regulatory text documents and policies that also are taken into account in adopting the technology. The African Union has made a statement, and encouraging governments to consider the use of gene drive for malaria control. And this is a very good asset for the countries. The second pillar, which is very important for the country perspectives, beside regulatory questions, is engagement. I think Claudia really said it all. Engagement is key, and transparency is the key for engagement. We in Mali, within Target Malaria, decided to talk about what we are doing at all the level. National level, we're talking to institutions, we're talking to authorities, we're talking to regulatory bodies. At the regional level, so this is a provincial level, where we talk also to the prefect, to the regional provincial authorities. And we also have what we call the local engagement level. So this is where the lab is on the campus of the university, and where the villages are, where we are working, where we are doing the baseline entomology. So almost like every week or every 2 weeks, we have a group to explain the project to. And this includes gene drive. And again, as I said, Mali is not a silo. So this engagement is also global. So, and we participate in the global outreach for gene drive. There is a body independent from Target Malaria, which is called Gene Drive Outreach, and this is a global initiative, talking about gene drive at the global level. But it's also important that for us in Africa to have maybe a replicate of this gene drive outreach, so that the message is also coming from scientists and regulatory bodies from Africa. The message, I think it's well better received when it's coming from African initiatives. I'm not saying it's not good when it doesn't come from African initiatives, so don't get me wrong. But such an initiative is getting initiated. So we are talking to everybody who is interested to have an African-based gene drive network, so that Africans can talk about gene drive to Africans. And for that initiative, it's not only the engagement. I'm going to dwell into the third pillar also of the perspectives. It's also training, but this time science. Because when we do the engagement, we also get the question, can you do that? Can you guys do the modification in your lab? And not many scientists in Africa can answer yes to that question. I'm probably one of the luckiest one, where in my lab, I have the equipment to do the injection, I have the equipment to do the screening, but it's not true for many African countries. And gene drive, not yet. But genetically modified mosquitoes, without the gene drive, yes. But how many scientists in Africa can say yes? I think that there is an opportunity for training, for bringing the technology into Africa. Having the transfer of technology, the science made in Africa. And I think that will solve the problem of parachuting technologies. Because he said, okay, phase 0, he called it phase 0. So now we want to bring phase 0 to Africa. And I think that will be very helpful. He also mentioned the co-development. I think that's part of the co-development. We don't intend to say that co-development means that everything will be done in Africa. I think that's not realistic either. But at a certain point, we need to see what is possible, what is not possible. So bringing the technology to Africa will also, help solve another problem with technologies. What is it? Now, we don't have certification bodies for insectaries, and I think that's important. And FNH, I know, is making effort to have such an initiative so that the insectaries can be certified. And in Africa, we also are thinking about it. We have a Pan-African organization called PAMCA, Pan-African Mosquito Association, where we have started discussion to have such a body to certify insectaries for the technologies. So I think there is an opportunity here. So I have only 25 seconds left. I will finish by the most important part of the question, funding. So I think funding also is important. We need support. Any single African country will not be able to do this because I'm going to say this. I don't know what's going to happen when I get back. But there is no funding for science. And then we need support for that. With that, I will thank you very much for your attention.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Mamadou. I think we're going to take a few questions now. Again, please stay calm. When Africa Union established the high-level panel on emerging technologies, they selected 10 technologies to look at, and they said we will deal with 3 in the beginning, and one of them was gene drives for malaria control, another was microgrids, and I'm forgetting the third one. You know what that was? The third one was drones. And they asked us at the time, can you do it? And we said, no, we can't. They said, okay, go build the capacity. So actually, the statement that came from the Africa Union, which I believe is in the last slide of Stephanie's presentation, clearly says, as a basic, functionality, please build capacity to be able to talk about this as experts. Don't shy away from it. And I think this is a very strong message from the Africa Union. This panel was chaired by Professor Callistus Juma, God rest his soul in peace. He unfortunately passed on already a few months ago. But they have left us with the responsibility. They have left us with the responsibility to build capacity, to be able to tell our regulators what is the true status of gene drive. Can we use it safely? Is it good for us? And should we go that direction? And we believe that in the wings of people like Abdoulaye Diabate, Mamadou Coulibaliy, Kayondo, Prosper Chaki is leading PAMCA right in there. In the wings of people like this, we will be able to answer yes to many of these questions and really support the continent and all our regulators. So ladies and gentlemen, in the spirit of partnerships, we also need a lot of your ideas. We have 2 microphones here. We would like to hear your views. And then my colleagues in the panel will help respond to these ones. Peter Sangoro, I'm going to request you to help us move the microphone around. But please, there is a microphone over there. You can just stand behind and do that. Thank you very much. I'm sorry I gave you a job.
Thank you, Chair. Just one question and one comment, maybe. I'm not too sure which side to start. But let me just ask a question first. The gene drive, where would we recommend this? For high burden countries or for countries that are very close to elimination? And in saying this, as I follow the discussions, I also noticed that we're using the 2 words control and elimination interchangeably. But in some settings, they don't quite mean the same. So trying to put back to the question that I was asking to say, would we recommend this for control settings or elimination settings? Now coming to the comment, I think going to you, Fredros, I think when you retire, you'll make a very good politician. And of course, saying this, I'm also saying politicians make bad decisions or statements sometimes. I think I'm trying to follow the statement that you made about the IRS and the use of liens or mosquito nets to eliminate malaria. And I was a bit uncomfortable when we said we can do all these, but without gene drive, we cannot eliminate malaria. And I'm saying I'm not too sure about that. We've got examples globally of places that have eliminated malaria without gene drive. And I come from a country that has recorded only 522 cases of malaria in 2018. And there's no gene drive. The main intervention is IRS. And I'm saying to the colleagues, especially from Africa, that if you do IRS and do it well, we can eliminate malaria. Thank you.
So, thank you very much. What's your name again, sir?
Davis.
Davis. From Botswana. Yes. So thank you very much, Davis. I think what we're going to do is take multiple questions and then answer. Very quickly, in response to David, we do agree completely with you. We believe, and our experts have also told us that yes, indeed, there are multiple cases where we can use existing interventions to do a very good job. There are also a number of cases in this same continent where either because of health systems or because of infrastructure differences or just because of the level of transmission that we have at the moment, that we will indeed need new tools. But I think this is a discussion that we must continue to have, and it's really nice that people like Davis are bringing this up. So I will park that question for my colleagues to respond, and we take additional questions. Yes, please.
Hello? Yeah, okay. First of all, thank you so much for this panel. It's been very, very interesting. So I'm Flaminia Katerucha from the Harvard School of Public Health in Boston, and I'm interested in the safety aspect and the safety standards that were mentioned a few times by different panelists. And so I wanted to ask whether there are actually a set of minimal like safety controls that have been recommended, and what are those? I'll just give you an example, maybe, so that we see, for instance, we work on mosquito reproduction in my lab, and we do modifications that reduce the reproductive output of female mosquitoes. And we often see that when we do that, those female mosquitoes are actually better at transmitting parasites. So, but in a weird way, so parasites don't proliferate more, but they actually go faster. So they are transmitted in a shorter period of time, which would have detrimental effects on transmission. But still, so there have been a few suppression gene drives that have been published, but I've seen no follow-up studies measuring the ability of those females to transmit malaria. And I just wanted to know whether, in order to build trust in the technology and bridge the technology and people, whether something like that is in the plan.
Let's take one more, and then we answer all the three together. Next question. I think we can bring this to the... Oh, yeah, we have one right there.
Hi, thanks for the session. Looking at the end of the development pathway that you kind of laid out for gene drive technology, there seems like an assumption that with all the good community engagement work and all the whole process working out, that everybody's going to be on board for large-scale open releases. But what happens if a region, a province, a country does not agree to this? Then how much buffer do you give them? Can their neighbors no longer participate? What kind of distances do you have to disable for gene drives per se in order to respect their autonomy, their wishes? Thanks.
Thank you very much. I'm going to request one of the panelists or two to respond. Claudia, I believe there's a question that's addressed to you. on the public engagement side, the last one. I think the second question I would like to ask Steve and Mamadou to try and have a crack at those. On the safety concerns, especially how we ensure transparency to get all the safety concerns resolved before moving further.
Okay.
Go ahead.
On now? Or just shout? Okay, great. The first question was about, do we do this technology for control or elimination? And I think for me, for the first testing of first in class, you go into an area where you've got continuous vector populations rather than patchy ones, which you might expect in places of elimination, because you want to drive the construct through. So I think what you're looking for is reasonably... Should I just shout? It's gone off again. You hearing me now? Aha, I can hear this appalling this voice booming out across the audience. The question was control or elimination. Where would you use gene drive? So I think my answer to that is quite clear. When you're starting out on this, you want to drive the genes through populations. So you want continuous, spatially, populations of vectors to ensure that you get good drive. I think if you're doing it in positions of eliminations, you're more likely to have patchy distributions of vectors, and then you won't get effective spread. I would imagine, at least to begin with, before you know how well it spreads. I've lost myself again. Okay. This one? Yeah. Safety standards. I think that's another lecture or discussion. But I think if I can just raise some of my own concerns, as with any intervention, one measures adverse events. Not expecting to find them, but that's what you do. So you might be particularly concerned about allergic responses as well. You may be concerned about certainly impacts on pregnant women, so you monitor all these things. We've just done this recently in a trial of a new type of net in Burkina Faso, so that's standard. If you're introducing a mosquito which is refractory to malaria parasites, it's me. I'll just bellow, I think.
You can come and use this, Steve. Yeah, come further.
If you're spreading mosquitoes which are refractory to malaria parasites, there is a possibility you may be selecting for parasites that aren't taken out by those antibodies, the oocysts and the sporozoites. So you may select for other strains. That needs to be considered. There's the issue of impact on biodiversity. What's the role of mosquitoes in pollinating if you collapse the population? Is the construct going to become resistant over time? Is the drive going to come adrift from the effector mechanism? So there's a great deal of things to think about. All part of the risk assessment, and I'm sure there'll be many folk in the audience that have concerns of their own. So this sort of process for risk assessment, I think, needs a hell of a lot of greater thought put into this, so that we measure the right things in the environment, the sensitive things in the environment and in the human population as well. Mamadou, would you like to fill in all the gaps I've left?
Yeah, thank you for the questions. First of all, I just would like to make sure that Ms. Davis is very comfortable. I don't think the intention was to really say that gene drive will do it all. Definitely not. We have experiences that, in the 50s, that IRS, has played a very central role in malaria education in some places. So that's really probably the way we crafted our sentences. But Gene Drive is going to be a very important tool for, in addition to what existed. So that's our thinking, our belief. So now for the question relative to the safety, we have plans, and one of the questions is, we probably don't want any modified mosquitoes being able to transmit more or better malaria than the non-modified mosquitoes. And within Target Malaria, we have a plan to look at those issues, and we are thinking about even some of the diseases that not primarily being transmitted by Anopheles. So those questions, yes, we are taking care of that. And you can think of other safety questions, like Steve said. So I think the answer to the question is yes, we have a plan for that. But I'm not saying that everything is perfect. So there is unknown, there's known unknown, and there's unknown unknowns. So, and we are aware of those ones also. So I think there is a question about the transboundary issues. I don't know, maybe Willie will probably take on that. But there are sub-regional regulations, sub-regional policies. The Cartagena Protocol is one of them. So countries that are neighboring, agree on those policies. But if there is a disagreement, I think there is a need to talk more. And the question is very important, even not at the country level, actually even at a village level. You may decide to release in a village, and the neighboring village will say, we don't agree. But again, during our engagement work, we also ought to understand the decision making of those countries or the decision making of those villages, and then we go by that. So that's what I can say. Maybe Willie wants to take on that question for the gap, filling the gap, the transboundary questions.
Yeah, just before Willie, I'm wondering if we have additional questions so that we can add to this. Willie and Claudia will also respond. So, yeah, yes, please. Peter will give you the microphone.
So I am wondering if you're considering modeling conflicting interventions like insecticide spraying, because you will be affecting the gene drives that you'll be integrating into to control the mosquitoes, either replacement or suppression.
Yes, any other question? This one over the other side. While we check that, the answer is yes. All the modeling exercises that are taking place right now consider the fact that there's already a baseline intervention that is either a bed net, an insecticidal bed net, for example, or indoor residual spraying, and that gene drives are being implemented as additional complementary interventions. My colleagues.
Are you considering the effect that you're going to have on the mosquitoes, the gene drive mosquitoes?
Right.
And you might have to drop down one of the interventions.
I get the point. I get the point. There's an elaborate response to this in the sense that you must introduce your construct into the local population. In the beginning, I remember when we started the discussions in this, there were concerns that, what about if the mosquitoes in the village are already insecticide resistant, and the mosquitoes with the drive are susceptible? Aren't they all going to be killed by the bed nets? You get the point? Yeah. So these are genuine concerns, and this is why, for example, we have to think about what are the options of introducing the drive into the local mosquito population so that we are not introducing anything new. But all this information must be put together to generate a joint, position about that. So, yes.
Yeah, thank you. I'm wondering if with respect to the idea of novel control strategies or strategies for elimination, if there's any room for reconsidering larviciding as part of integrated vector management strategies, which of course there are new technologies that are quite good, including geospatial mapping for predicting sites for breeding, and molecular technologies for reducing larvae in their natural habitats and source reduction. Those have been historically very good at reducing and in fact eliminating malaria in many places. And I don't hear that being talked about as much. So I'm wondering what the role potentially for those are, which may, and I'm only saying may, face fewer regulatory hurdles because those technologies are being used in many places for control or elimination of vector species. Thank you.
Thank you. Last question. Oh yeah, right in the middle. Good. Sangoro, right? Yeah, exactly. Steve, you're gonna take.
Hello. I had a question about, I know you were focusing on Gambi, but I was thinking back on something that Dr. Coulibaliy said about biting behavior and whether there's any concern about not targeting like Arabiensis or Phoenensis that might overtake that niche that is vacated essentially by Gambi once you get rid of it.
Brilliant. So I think we take all these three questions. First, I'm going to put the ball into Willie and Claudia's hands. And then, Steve, if you don't mind, you can take the question on larviciding. And I will ask Dr. Coulibaliy and Stephanie to take the last question on Anopheles funestris. Please use this.
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, I need to emphasize here that approvals are science-based and dependent on case-by-case basis. So if you are thinking suppression or replacement, those are factors that have to be considered during the decision-making process. And the Cartagena protocol is very clear that it has to be a science-based process, though socioeconomic considerations are very important, that my colleague here, Davis, could be alluding to in terms of political and social requirements are very important also during the decision-making process. And therefore, data is very important. So you have to supply adequate data to the regulators. This is safety. And this should also be based on ethical and regulatory standards in those countries. For standard makings, for Camila here, it's mentioned that standards has to be developed. Currently, there are limited standards. However, countries are coming up with this now. But also we have the element of institutional biosafety committees in your organization that should be responsible for also developing some of these guidelines and standards to support your projects. Mamadou has rightfully said for countries, some countries may say no to the technology, but because of the existence of the Cartagena Protocol, countries have signed, to ensure that there is a harmonized way of discussions during transboundary movements. There are also regional mechanisms that are also being developed. I talked about NEPAD's role in harmonization process. Regulatory agencies are also in discussions through regional blocks and all that. But if you have a very transparent process as outlined by all of us here, I think the issue of transboundary movements may be minimized. So I think that's what I was asked to talk about. So modeling data is also very essential when you're providing your overall dossier to the regulators. So big data, a lot of information, a lot of public awareness and participation is very important in the whole process. Thank you.
Can I pop up for 1 sec? Just go to address Flaminia's question again. One of the, I think, important recommendations that came out of this was the need for an independent external risk assessment before each phase of expanded testing. And that very important no-go decision point between moving from the lab to the field. So one of the things that we benefited from was having some people who had experience with containment and release decisions for exotic biocontrol agents. And the recommendations contain a fairly extensive list of things that you need to look at to make that go, no-go decision, including things like vector competence and changes in fitness and behavior and that sort of thing. So we think that's very important. Obviously, we tried to be as comprehensive in considering it as possible. But the other thing was that we felt that there needed to be an external risk assessment, not just the team, who may bring along some team bias as to whether they think it's safe or not, but to have an external group looking at those questions.
So if I understood the question from the gentleman correctly, was about the nature of engagement when it comes to this question of transboundary movement. And Willie already spoke quite a bit about that and the need for regional discussion, which is what's happening. NEPAD is leading this in terms of regional collaboration and harmonization. But ultimately, this comes down to a question, so engagement and ethics, right? So, you know, I mentioned that engagement is reciprocal. So, you know, as a sovereign country, I have a responsibility to engage with Mamadou and with Steve and say, this is what I'm planning to do. And the ideal situation is you would have a regional cluster harmonization, recognizing that the benefits and the potential risks are going to be collectively assumed in this particular region. But at the end of the day, let's say that Steve is completely and vehemently opposed to this and is, you know, is concerned about this transboundary movement. Then the question becomes one of, you know, as a sovereign country, it's the obligations that I have. So I'd have to assess the risks and benefits of, you know, potentially introducing conflict or ill will with my neighbors, and the obligation that I have to say the citizens of my country, if I have a tool which I know is now determined to be safe and effective, to address a pressing public health need. So I think the key thing is that engagement, especially at this regional level, is reciprocal, and we have responsibilities. I have a responsibility to engage my neighbors, but my neighbors also have a responsibility to engage with me and understand what those risks and benefits are, because potentially you're standing to gain and to assume the risks collectively.
Thank you. We are 2 minutes beyond time, but I think there was a question about larviciding and why we are not, whether it's still a good idea to consider these are the tools that are known to be effective. I'm going to ask Steve to try and tackle that. In addition to what Claudia said, at least in Africa, we are lucky to have the NEPAD agency, which is already spearheading together with the regional blocks a series of training opportunities for regulators, but also trying to create an environment where regional blocks can uniformly review the technology and make a decision as to whether it is a go or a no-go, really just being transparent about it. So, Steve, if you can tackle the question on larviciding, and then we should be coming to a close.
Thank you. I'm actually going to make it more broader than that. I think one of the important things is that we don't oversell this technology and that people wait for this technology. We are at a critical phase in the history of malaria control in sub-Saharan Africa where control has stalled and is increasing in some countries. And I think it's really paramount that we continue to deploy nets and IRS on a large scale. And yes, sir, I agree absolutely. I'm a great fan of larval control. This is an important additional tool. And we're looking for other interventions outside the health sector. So as much as we can do. And then to address really the issue about, well, how can you work out whether gene drive works if we're spraying everywhere? Well, I think you don't go to areas where they're doing heavy spraying. I think site selection is critically important. But don't take your foot off the gas, I think is my finishing line. Thanks.
So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I'm going to ask my co-chair to close the meeting.
Thank you, Fredros, for that excellent moderation, and thanks to all the panel members for their great contributions, and thanks to all of you for coming. I hope that you learned something and that you are walking out of this meeting feeling a little bit more confident about the way that this new technology is being pursued and how carefully it's being considered. And we thank you and enjoy the rest of the meeting.